There is a wellspring within you, ancient and eternal, that does not need to be found, for it has never left. It does not shout, it does not plead, it waits silently, lovingly, patiently. It is the flame that never flickers, the current that never ceases, the breath that does not need to be remembered because it has always been breathing you. Motivation is not something to be summoned like a servant, nor chased like a vanishing dream. It is not given to you by the applause of others or the ticking off of goals. Real motivation, sacred motivation, is a remembering, a return, a homecoming to the self that has never stopped calling out from the silence behind your thoughts. The world will try to convince you that motivation comes from the outside, from competition, from pressure, from reward. But I tell you this, anything that can be taken from you was never truly yours. And the kind of motivation that burns bright and then fades was never lit by your soul. The Tao says, the master does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. This is not laziness, it is alignment. It is the knowing that when you are in harmony with your essence, right action flows like a river. You do not need to push the river, you only need to remove the boulders of doubt, fear, and conditioning and allow what has always been natural to move through you. What motivates a tree to grow toward the sun? What moves the tides without force or struggle? What awakens a flower in the spring with no calendar, no clock, no command? It is the same divine impulse that lives in you, quietly urging you not to become more, but to become real. Motivation comes not from ambition, but from awareness, not from pressure, but from presence, not from needing to prove yourself, but from listening deeply enough to remember that you are already enough. And in that space, you begin to move, not because you must, but because you may. The ego will demand goals, results, evidence. The soul simply says, let me flow. And when you allow it, when you trust that the inner calling is enough, the outer world responds, not as a test, but as a mirror. The path appears not because you force it, but because you become ready to walk it. Do not wait for the world to light your fire. Be the fire. Do not wait for others to believe in you. Belief is your own breath whispered inward. Do not wait until the conditions are perfect. Conditions are illusions. What is real is your willingness to live from within. There is a force in you that has carried you through every dark night, every heartbreak, every moment you thought you would not survive. That force is not fragile, it is not unsure. It is the divine in motion, and it is you. But you must be willing to turn down the volume of the world to hear it. You must be brave enough to trust silence, to sit in stillness, to feel the ache, the longing, the fire, and instead of escaping it, welcome it like an old friend. It is there to remind you of your depth. You do not need more motivation. You need less distraction from your soul. You do not need more doing. You need deeper being. You do not need a new plan. You need to stop abandoning the one voice that has never lied to you, the voice within. Motivation is not energy. It is remembrance. It is the soul whispering, you are here for a reason, and that reason is not out there. It is in you. Let the world shout. Let the clocks tick. Let the demands press, and let you return inward. Because from within you will rise. From within you will act. From within you will create not from scarcity, but from surplus. Not from fear, but from love. And that, dear one, is the only motivation that lasts. Because it is not lit by effort, it is lit by eternity. You are not a machine to be fueled by fear or reward. You are a vessel for the sacred. You are a wave that remembers the ocean. You are the unfolding of divinity in human form. Motivation comes from within, and within is where your true life begins. And so, as you breathe in this moment, know that you are not preparing to begin. You are already in the unfolding. The caterpillar does not strategize how to become the butterfly. It simply surrenders to the mysterious intelligence that whispers, now is the time. And from that surrender, transformation occurs without strain, without worry, without needing to understand the entire process. So too is the quiet path of motivation that flows from within. It does not clamor for attention. It simply responds to the inner season of your soul. There is a rhythm to life, a pulse beneath the noise, and when you attune to it, your actions become not frantic gestures of self-worth, but sacred expressions of alignment. You do not need to run ahead of your spirit to catch your destiny. You need only to walk beside your truth, hand in hand with your integrity, and trust that each step will be revealed when your foot is ready to meet the ground. When you act from your essence, every task becomes an extension of the sacred. Washing dishes is not mundane, it becomes a meditation. Writing an email, brushing your hair, offering a smile, each act, no matter how small, becomes a vessel through which your inner presence flows into the world. This is the art of divine motivation, not to do for recognition, but to do because it is the natural response of the soul being itself. The greatest tragedy is not that we are unmotivated, it is that we have been motivated by what is not true. We have been driven by fear disguised as ambition. We have confused noise for purpose, but true motivation does not come from proving. It comes from being so deeply rooted in your own truth that movement becomes inevitable. Just as the sun does not need applause to rise, you do not need external permission to shine. There is nothing more radiant than someone who is quietly, unapologetically in tune with themselves. They do not need to chase attention, they become attention. Their very presence becomes a sermon without words, and that presence is available to you not in the future, not after the next achievement, but here, now. In the deep stillness of your being that has never stopped believing in you, let yourself soften into that stillness. Let yourself fall beneath the waves of striving into the quiet ocean of surrender. For it is in that place when you are no longer straining to become where the greatest power is found. Not the power to dominate, but the power to create. Not the power to impress, but the power to express. The power to let life flow through you as a sacred instrument of truth. You were never meant to manufacture purpose. You were meant to remember it. And when you remember it, you no longer need to be pushed. You are pulled. Pulled by grace. Pulled by joy. Pulled by something vast and loving that does not speak in deadlines, but in devotion. You do not need to ignite your fire with force. Simply remove what dampens it. Let go of comparison. Let go of timelines. Let go of the belief that your worth is somewhere outside of you, waiting to be earned. Your worth is what you are made of. It cannot be added to. It cannot be diminished. It can only be either remembered or forgotten. Today you are invited to remember. Remember the part of you that does not measure life by productivity, but by presence. Remember the quiet, knowing that your value is not in what you produce, but in what you emanate. Remember that your very existence is proof that life chose you as a vessel for its light. And when you begin to live from that remembering, your motivation becomes effortless. Not because life becomes easy, but because it becomes clear. You stop asking, how can I do more? And begin to ask, how can I be more myself? And that question, asked in sincerity, opens a well of guidance. Within that, no book, no system, no external voice can provide. You become your own compass, your own fire, your own source of light. And as the compass within you steadies, you begin to notice a subtle shift, not in the world, but in the way the world reflects you. Where once you saw obstacles, you now see invitations. Where once you felt pressure, you now feel participation. No longer are you chasing your life from behind or pulling it along from ahead. You are walking with it, step for step, soul beside soul, like an old friend you had forgotten how to trust. The moment you stop asking life to perform for you and instead offer yourself in service to it, motivation arises like breath in a quiet room. It is not dramatic, it is not grandiose, but it is unstoppable. Because it is rooted not in the whims of circumstance, but in the core of your being, a being that is timeless, a being that is whole. And when you are rooted in wholeness, you begin to act not because you lack something, but because you are overflowing. You write not because you must impress, but because the words are already blooming in your chest like springtime. You create not to be validated, but because your very breath is a poem and you long to share its rhythm with the world. This is not ambition, this is remembrance. This is the soul's way of saying, I am here to be who I already am without apology, without delay. You are not here to chase dreams that were handed to you by a culture that profits from your discontent. You are here to awaken the dream that was seeded into you before you had a name. A dream that does not require recognition. A dream that does not require you to sacrifice your peace on the altar of performance. A dream that waits for you not at the finish line, but in the quiet decision to walk each step from presence. And presence is not something you schedule. It is something you allow. It cannot be timed, bought, or measured. It is the space between your thoughts. It is the silence behind the noise. It is the unshakable stillness beneath every wave of emotion. It is you, before the striving, before the story, before the need to prove. To live from this place is to trust that your worth is not tied to effort, but to essence. And from that essence, motivation flows like a sacred river. You do not ask the river, why do you flow? You simply stand in awe as it carves canyons, feeds forests, and finds its way to the sea. So too with the soul. It does not move with urgency, it moves with inevitability. The question is not whether the river will reach the ocean. The question is only whether you will surrender to its flow or fight against its current. Fighting looks like burnout. It looks like self-rejection in the name of productivity. It looks like applause that feels hollow and accomplishments that do not nourish. But flowing looks like peace. Flowing looks like actions born from inspiration rather than obligation. Flowing looks like a quiet smile that spreads across your face because you know that what you're doing right now is aligned with your being. And when your being and your doing are one, you are not merely productive, you are powerful. Not the power that dominates, but the power that radiates. The power that bends reality not through force, but through presence. The kind of power that says to the universe, here I am, fully me, do with this light what you will. And in that surrender, in that open-hearted offering, you become a conduit, not for your ego's desires, but for something much deeper, your soul's remembering of why it came here in the first place. You see, your deepest motivation is not manufactured, it is remembered. It is born from listening, from sitting still long enough to hear the sacred instructions etched into your very being. And those instructions do not come in the form of step-by-step plans. They come as feelings, yearnings. Sparks that ignite not the mind, but the heart. Trust those sparks. Follow them like breadcrumbs scattered by grace itself. They will not lead you into a life that the world necessarily understands, but they will lead you into a life that your soul recognizes as home. And in that home, you will move with quiet conviction. You will speak with clarity. You will act not out of obligation, but out of resonance. And your life will become not a race, but a rhythm. Not a performance, but a presence. Chat ZPT Danoi. And in that rhythm, a profound realization begins to bloom, that your life was never meant to be measured in milestones, but in moments. Not in how much you've accomplished, but in how fully you've lived. The soul does not care how many trophies you've earned, how high you've climbed, or how loud the applause has grown. The soul only asks, did you move in truth? Did you offer your gift without self-betrayal? Did you listen when the world went quiet? Because in those quiet spaces where nothing needs to be done, and yet everything begins, you find the wellspring of true motivation. It is not the kind that jolts you awake with urgency. It is the kind that awakens you gently, reminding you that you are not here to be driven like a machine, but to be moved like music. Music does not strive, it unfolds, and so must you. The rose does not panic at the speed of its blooming. The stars do not compare their brilliance. The tide does not question its own rhythm. All of nature knows what we in our forgetting have misplaced. True motivation is not a pushing forward, it is a rising up from within. You do not need to whip yourself into action. You need to become quiet enough to hear the call that is already stirring in the sacred marrow of your life. When that call comes, and it will not sound like a command, it will sound like a knowing, a soft pulse in the heart, a warmth in the belly, a tear that rises without reason. That is the language of the soul. And when you learn to listen to it, your every step becomes an act of devotion. You no longer move because of the world's demands, you move because life itself is living through you. In this space, every breath is prayer. Every thought is a choice. Every moment is an opportunity to return, not to some past version of you, but to the you that has been silently waiting beneath the noise all along. And when you return, when you truly return, you will notice something extraordinary. The things you once forced now come to you with grace. The people you chased now find their way to your door. The dreams you held so tightly now unfold with elegance, not because you pushed harder, but because you aligned deeper. This is the sacred paradox. The less you strive, the more flows. The more you surrender, the more you rise. The more you release what you think should motivate you, the more space is made for what truly does. And what truly does is love. Not the fleeting, conditional love that depends on outcomes, but the eternal love that recognizes the sacredness in each act, no matter how ordinary. That is the only source of motivation that never runs dry. Love for the moment, love for the work, love for the life you are blessed to live. So if you must be driven by something, let it not be fear, let it be reverence. Let your days not be filled with tasks to conquer, but with opportunities to consecrate. Let each choice you make be infused with the awareness that everything is connected, that your intention matters, your presence matters, your energy matters more than you've ever been told. The world has taught you to pursue motivation like a fuel, burn it fast, get things done, move on. But your soul is calling you to become the flame itself, everlasting, illuminating, not because of the effort you exert, but because of the light you allow. So rest, dear one, not in inaction, but in inner alignment. Rest in the truth that you do not need to push to be powerful. You need only to be present, to be impactful. For the greatest source of motivation is not out there, it is already moving through you. And when you learn to trust that this sacred inner movement is enough that it does not need to be amplified, adorned, or explained, something ancient reawakens within you. The need to hustle for your worth, to race for recognition, begins to dissolve like mist beneath the morning sunday. In its place arises a quiet dignity, an inner authority that knows, I am not here to be validated, I am here to be revealed. And as you are revealed, not through performance, but through presence, the whole universe begins to shift in response. Not because you demanded it to, but because you aligned with the rhythm that has always been beating beneath your being, the rhythm of authenticity, the rhythm of grace. When you are motivated by alignment rather than ambition, you discover that every action becomes sacred. You don't write the book to be admired, you write it because the words have become too full to keep inside. You don't sing the song for applause, you sing because the melody has ripened in your chest and it would be a disservice to silence. You don't start the business to prove your value, you start it because your very presence infuses value into everything it touches. And that is the divine reversal. The world teaches you to seek motivation to get results. But the soul whispers, return to who you are, and the results will become irrelevant. Not because they no longer matter, but because they are no longer the measure of your worth. They become fruit, not fuel. You begin to see that the true reward is not in what you gain, but in how deeply you were willing to be yourself, how boldly you listened, how gently you moved, how authentically you allowed yourself to show up, even when no one was watching. This is the essence of inner freedom, not to be untethered from responsibility, but to be unbound by performance, to act from a place so true, so still, that your entire life becomes a symphony, unwritten, unrehearsed, and utterly perfect in its imperfection. And yes, there will be days when you forget this. Days when the old voices return, whispering their doubt, enticing you with their promises of worth through productivity. But even then you will have something they cannot reach, a memory, a muscle of stillness that remembers the truth even when the mind trembles. You will remember that you are not your outcomes. You are not your schedule. You are not your hustle, your status, your resume, or your reputation. You are the still point from which all movement arises. You are the awareness watching the rise and fall of your desires, knowing none of them can contain you. You are the witness of this dance, not the dancer who must always move to be seen. And in this space, you can rest, you can act, you can create, not because you must, but because your essence longs to be expressed not for recognition, but for resonance. This kind of living does not burn you out, it burns you open. It does not leave you empty, it empties you of all that is false. And what remains is motivation in its purest form, desire without desperation, movement without anxiety, purpose without pressure. It is the kind of motivation that speaks softly but moves mountains, that does not seek to conquer but to contribute, that does not separate the sacred from the ordinary but sees the sacred in the ordinary, in each step, each breath, each humble offering of your life to life itself. Because this is not about productivity. This is about presence. This is not about force. This is about flow. And when you live from flow, life ceases to be something you manage. It becomes something you meet, something you merge with, something you co-create, not from fear of being left behind, but from joy in being fully here. That is the holy ground of true motivation, where every breath is a vow to stay connected to yourself, where every action is a prayer, where every moment whispers, you are already enough, and still you are free to bloom. And bloom you will, not with noise, not with urgency, but like the sunrise, inevitable, majestic, and wholly unbothered by who is watching. For the soul does not unfold on a schedule, and truth does not rush to meet a deadline. What is real does not need to be hurried, and what is holy cannot be forced. You are not here to be fast, you are here to be true. And the truest things in this life move slowly. A tree does not grow in haste, a mountain is not carved in moments. The deepest rivers run the quietest, and the most transformative truths arrive not with fanfare, but with a whisper that says, now is the time. Now is the time to stop waiting for permission, not from the world, not from your past, not even from the parts of you still unsure if you are worthy of the life you long to live. The truth is, you would not carry the vision if you were not already encoded with the capacity to fulfill it. The dream is not a test. It is a mirror showing you what already lives within. And when you see it clearly, without doubt, without disguise, you begin to feel the power of choice returning to your hands. Not the kind of choice that rushes to fix or prove, but the sacred kind, the choice to simply begin to say yes, to move not because you are pressured, but because you are finally present. From this place, even the smallest step becomes a revelation, a turning point, a doorway to a life not built by striving, but by surrender. Because you are no longer living from the outside in, you are living from the inside out. And that shift, that quiet, almost imperceptible shift, is everything. Suddenly, the path ahead is no longer a staircase you must climb, it becomes a song you must dance. Suddenly, your days are no longer filled with things you must accomplish, but with moments you get to experience. The fire within you is no longer a blaze burning out of control, it becomes a hearth, steady, warm, endlessly generous. And others will feel it. They will be drawn to you not because of what you do, but because of the energy from which you do it. They will ask you, how do you stay inspired? How do you keep going? And you will smile, not because you have a strategy, but because you have a secret. And that secret is this: you are not chasing motivation. You are listening to your soul. The soul does not speak in goals. It speaks in resonance. It tells you not what the world wants, but what your spirit is ready to express. And that expression is never random. It is the medicine you are meant to offer, not in grand gestures, but in the honest way you move through your life. And here is the quiet miracle. The more you trust that your inner guidance is enough, the more life responds in kind. Doors open, not because you knock harder, but because you arrive fully. Opportunities arise, not because you push for them, but because you are no longer hiding from them. You begin to realize that it was never about summoning more effort. It was about removing the blocks to your natural flow. Fear, doubt, comparison. These are not the truth of you. They are clouds, temporary, passing. But the light behind them, that is eternal. And that light is you. It always has been. You have not been led through these words to be entertained. You have been led here because something in you, timeless, vast, unshaken, has been waiting for this return. A return to stillness, a return to source. A return to the knowing that what motivates your soul is not the promise of a distant reward, but the intimacy of the now. Let us remember this together. You are not the seeker of light. You are the light that seeks expression. You are not waiting for a reason to act. You are the reason. You are not here to chase the sun across the sky. You are here to remember that it rises in you. No longer must you run from yourself to feel alive. No longer must you conquer to feel valuable. No longer must you gather to feel full. For the fullness you've hungered for has always lived in your breath, in your heartbeat, in your presence. And when you live from that place, the world begins to move with you, not against you. Let your movements now be sacred, not rushed. Let your goals be guided, not grasped. Let your voice carry the truth of still waters and ageless stars. Because what you offer the world is not your resume, your accolades, your image. What you offer the world, what it longs for, aches for, hungers for, is your realness, your radiance, your reverent aliveness. And this motivation that comes from within it is not a moment. It is a state of being, a communion with the eternal current that animates all life. It is the silent river beneath every great song, every great act of love, every quiet moment of courage. It is your birthright. It is your blueprint. It is you. So take this knowing with you, not in your hands, but in your soul. Walk slowly now. Let the earth feel your feet. Let the sky meet your gaze. Let every interaction be an offering. Let every silence be a prayer. You no longer need to hurry. You are not behind. You are exactly where life is asking you to bloom. There is no summit beyond you that will make you more whole. There is no success outside you that will make you more sacred. There is only this, the breath, the being, the becoming. Not of someone new, but of someone true. So go now, not to find your path, but to walk it. Not to seek your fire, but to live it. And remember always, when the noise of the world grows loud, when doubt returns like an old visitor, when the way forward feels dim or uncertain, pause, close your eyes, and feel that gentle stirring within. That stirring is your soul. That soul is your guide. And that guide is enough. Motivation comes from within. It always has. It always will. There is a silent music playing within you. You may not hear it with your ears, but your soul feels it. It hums beneath every breath, dances in the space between your thoughts, and calls to you in moments of stillness, when the noise of the world fades, and all that remains is a whisper, a vibration, a knowing. This music is not made of notes or instruments. It is the sound of your purpose, the rhythm of your essence, the sacred song your soul came here to express. It does not beg to be famous or praised. It longs only to be lived, fully, authentically, now. But too often we silence it. We silence it with doubt, with fear, with the weight of other people's expectations. We trade the soaring melody of our inner truth for the safe hum of conformity. We bury our dreams beneath layers of should and must, and later, telling ourselves that someday we will begin, someday we will speak our truth, someday we will create, dance, sing, love, risk. But someday is not a day on the calendar of eternity. And so I ask you, softly but firmly, with all the love I have in me, will you let that music die inside of you? Will you go to your grave with your song unsung? Will you dim your light so others can stay comfortable in the dark? Will you deny the sacred expression that only you can bring into this world? No soul is born without music. No life arrives without purpose. You are not here by accident. You are not a random act of biology. You are a divine creation, an infinite being wrapped in a temporary form, and the music within you is your soul's way of reminding you why you came. There is a reason why the Tao Te Ching speaks of the value of emptiness, of becoming like the valley, of softening and yielding. It is in that emptiness, in that openness, that the music can rise. The ego clings to form, to control, to outcome, but the soul simply longs to be expressed. And when you live from your soul, the music plays without effort. You become a flute through which the breath of the divine flows. You become a river that carves canyons, not by force, but by surrender. You become a tree that doesn't strive to grow, but trusts the sunlight, trusts the rain, trusts the unfolding of life. So why do we hold back? Because we have been taught that we are not enough, that our voice is too small, our dreams too foolish, our essence too strange. We are told to be realistic, to be safe, to be quiet, and in obeying that command, we abandon the very thing we came to share. But the soul is not here to be realistic. The soul is here to be radiant. You were not born to blend in. You were born to awaken, to ignite, to ripple, to love so boldly, so freely, that your very presence becomes a song the world has never heard before and yet always longed for. And yes, the world may not understand you, but that's not your job. Your job is not to be understood. Your job is to be true. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for the applause. Do not wait until you feel ready. The soul doesn't ask if it's worthy, it knows. Your unexpressed music is not just a sadness, it is a sacred grief. The grief of a divine spark trapped behind walls of fear. The grief of potential unused. The grief of love withheld. And the only healing is expression. Let it out, even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, even if no one claps. Let it out. The poem, the song, the truth, the yes, the no, the tears, the joy, the silence. Let it out. Because the more you express, the more you remember, and the more you remember, the more alive you become. This life is not a rehearsal. It is the main act. The curtain is already open. The stage is already lit. The audience is your own soul, watching, waiting, praying that you will step forward and sing. Even if you are afraid, especially if you are afraid, because fear is not a stop sign, it is an invitation. It is the trembling doorway between who you were told to be and who you really are. And when you walk through that doorway, not with arrogance, but with sacred courage, you discover a world beyond safety. A world where you don't just survive, you soar. You begin to realize that the voice calling you forward is not outside of you. It is not the demand of society, not the echo of ambition, not the pressure of time. It is the ancient voice within the voice that existed before you were born into form, the voice that remembers the agreements your soul made before it wore a name. That voice doesn't yell, it doesn't beg. It simply beckons like a candle glowing in the darkness, reminding you of the way back home. And home is not a place on a map. It is not found in applause, in status, in recognition. It is found in alignment. In the still moment where your breath meets your being and your being meets the divine, that is where the music stirs. That is where the melody begins to rise, not from effort, but from surrender. You don't have to compose it, you don't have to plan it, you only have to listen. For the music within you is not a performance. It is not meant to be judged or critiqued. It is a sacred offering, a love note from your soul to the universe, a vibration that ripples outward in ways your mind may never understand. A single note of truth can change the whole composition of a life. And so the question is not, will they like my song? The question is, will I let it sing? Will you stop editing yourself into silence? Will you stop waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect words, the perfect plan? Will you stop comparing your symphony to someone else's noise? You are not here to mimic. You are here to manifest. You are not here to follow. You are here to flow. And your flow cannot be mapped, predicted, or controlled because your soul is a river born of the infinite and it will not be tamed. This is the courage you are being asked to embody, not the courage of warriors, but the courage of truth tellers, of soul bearers, of those who choose to stand in the rawness of their authenticity even when the world offers no guarantees. There is a sacred fire in you. It may have burned low, buried beneath years of doubt and duty, but it has never gone out, and now it longs to rise, not to consume, but to illuminate, not to destroy, but to transmute. When you live from that fire, your life becomes art, not because you set out to make art, but because everything you touch becomes infused with presence. Your words become prayers. Your silence becomes sanctuary. Your steps become a dance that heaven watches in awe. But you must choose. You must choose to stop living according to a script written by fear. You must choose to step beyond the role you were cast in by circumstance. You must choose to let the truth of your being write the next scene. And truth is never loud. It does not shout over others. It does not demand attention. It simply shines like the sun, indifferent to whether it is seen or understood. It shines because that is its nature. So shine, not to be seen, but because you are light. And when you begin to shine from that place, something ancient within you exhales a long-forgotten breath that you've been holding since the day you began to believe that love had to be earned, that worth was conditional, that truth had to be softened to be safe. But now that breath returns. Now the exhale begins, not in resignation, but in release. Not in giving up, but in finally giving in to yourself. The moment you step into your truth, the universe does not blink in confusion. It sighs in recognition, because you are not defying life by being who you are fulfilling it. You are the blooming of a flower that has waited lifetimes to open. You are the echo of a song the stars sang before there were ears to hear it. You are the presence of the eternal clothed in this fleeting body, and when you live as that, you need not prove a thing. The ego is terrified of this freedom because it thrives in the chase. It feeds on the future. It builds palaces in the mind that you are never allowed to enter. It says you will be worthy when, and then it changes the conditions as soon as you approach them. But the soul doesn't move in futures. The soul moves in presence, in immediacy, in the fullness of now. And so when you begin to live from the soul, not conceptually, not spiritually bypassing, but truly rooted, you realize something quietly revolutionary. There is nothing missing. Not in you, not in this moment, not in your life. Even the so-called flaws, the wounds, the stumbles, they are not detours. They are sacred brushstrokes in the art of your becoming. Nothing has been wasted. Not a single tear, not a single heartbreak. Not a single moment spent wandering. Every path you've walked, every version of you that once believed it had to be smaller to be loved, they all led you here. And here is holy. Here is where the music begins again. Perhaps you stopped hearing it. Perhaps the weight of the world grew too loud, but it never left. That divine frequency, that ancient hum, it's still vibrating through your chest, waiting to be noticed. It doesn't need fixing. It needs your listening. So sit, be still. Let the world race on if it must. Let the news scream. Let the timeline scroll. Let the pressure build like waves against your window. But within, be the unmoving mountain. Be the vast sky. Be the silent witness who remembers. Because when you remember not with the mind, but with the being, all striving ceases. The seed does not strive to bloom. It allows. The moon does not fight to shine. It reflects. The wave does not struggle to reach the shore. It flows. And so must you. Let go of the performance. Let go of the identity that says you must always be progressing, improving, upgrading. You are not software. You are soul. You are spirit. You are essence. And essence does not need enhancements. It needs expression. Let yourself cry without explaining. Let yourself laugh without apologizing. Let yourself dream without diminishing. Let yourself rest without guilt. These are not indulgences. They are your return. They are how the music finds its way through the cracks and begins to echo again through every chamber of your life. And when it does, you don't just live, you resonate. You walk into a room and shift its energy without speaking a word. You touch someone's hand and they feel seen for the first time. You speak and your voice carries the weight of 100 unseen angels. That is the power of someone whose music has not died within them. That is the light you were born to shine. And as the music of your soul reawakens and begins to play not in notes but in the rhythm of your living, you begin to see that your entire life is the instrument. Every scar, every joy, every silent night you spent wondering if you mattered, they have become the strings, the keys, the breath holes through which the divine symphony plays. You begin to feel it in how you move slower now, more aware. You are no longer rushing towards some imagined destination. You are present, reverent, a quiet guest in the sacred temple of this moment. And the moment in turn reveals itself as holy. The ordinary becomes illuminated. A cup of tea is no longer just a drink, it's a ceremony. A walk in the morning is not just exercise, it's a pilgrimage. A look in the mirror is no longer just reflection, it's recognition, not of the body, but of the being. And that being, that eternal self behind your eyes, it begins to lead. You notice that you speak less, but your words carry more truth. You chase less, but more arrives. You strive less, but you feel more alive. Because the soul has taken the reins, not in domination, but in quiet alignment. It doesn't yell over the ego, it waits, it watches. And when you are ready, it whispers, welcome back. Welcome back to the space before thought, to the breath before tension, to the innocence before the world told you who to be. Welcome back to your own divine nature, the you that was never wounded, never separate, never lacking. It is here that healing begins. Not because you fixed yourself, but because you stopped denying yourself. You stopped pretending to be small. You stopped negotiating your light to fit into shadows that were never meant for you, and now the light expands. It doesn't demand that others understand. It doesn't seek validation. It simply radiates. You walk into your life not as someone begging for a place at the table, but as someone who is the table, offering presence, offering truth, offering love without need or condition. And something sacred happens when you do this, not only for you, but for everyone you touch. Your courage to express your music gives others permission to tune into their own. You become a mirror, not of perfection, but of possibility. And in your presence, people don't feel impressed, they feel remembered. Because your authenticity calls forth theirs. Your truth awakens their longing. Your stillness quiets their chaos. This is why you must not die with your music still in you. Because your music is not just for you. It is the medicine someone else has been praying for. It is the light someone else has been stumbling toward. It is the note that completes a song the universe has been composing through all of us, each soul, a different vibration, a unique expression of the one, and without your note, the symphony remains incomplete. So sing, even if your voice quiver, even if you've forgotten the words, even if no one else understands the tune. Sing, because your soul remembers. Sing, because the divine is listening. Sing, because the silence of suppression is far more painful than the vulnerability of expression. Let the melody of your being rise like a prayer, like a sunrise, like a gentle truth finally free. And in this sacred rising, you begin to feel what was always true but never fully claimed, that your life is not just a series of events. It is a love letter from the infinite, written in breath, in blood, in boldness, and quiet. Every experience you've lived, even the ones that bruised your spirit and bent your hope, was part of a deeper calling, a mysterious curriculum designed not to punish but to polish. You were never broken. You were being shaped, and now you begin to understand. The pain you carried was not the sign of your unworthiness. It was the cracking open of the shell so your essence could breathe. The nights you spent alone were not voids. They were chambers where your soul could echo back to you the sound of its own voice. And the longing you felt, that ache so deep it didn't have language, wasn't a curse. It was your music, knocking from the inside, asking to be let out. The world told you to be useful, to be efficient, to be impressive. But the soul says only this: be true. You do not have to be anyone else to be divine. You do not have to do anything special to be sacred. You do not have to reach a single milestone to be meaningful. You are already holy, not because of what you've done, but because of what you are. A soul on fire with remembrance, a spirit clothed in flesh, a flicker of God made visible through breath and heartbeat. And so you begin to live differently. You wake not with urgency, but with reverence. You speak not to perform, but to reveal. You give not to be praised, but because giving feels like breathing. And in this way of living, fear loses its grip, because fear feeds on illusion, and you no longer dwell in illusion. You no longer mistake your identity for your essence, your story for yourself. You no longer cling to outcomes like lifeboats. You realize the only true security is presence, and presence is always available. Always, even now. Especially now. You walk through the world like one who is seen behind the curtain, not above it all, but beneath it all. You touch the soul of things. You begin to see pain not as something to avoid, but as something to honor. Joy not as a reward, but as your natural state when resistance falls away. Other people not as threats or puzzles, but as fellow waves of the same ocean, remembering themselves through each other. This is what it means to be awake. Not to escape life, but to embody it fully. To meet each moment as it is, without needing it to be different, to be sacred. To love without possession. To give without depletion. To rest without guilt. To exist not as a project to fix, but as a presence to live. And from this place, your music becomes unstoppable. It pours from you not in noise, but in essence, it's in the way you listen, in the way you forgive, in the way you walk away from what no longer aligns, not in anger, but in truth. You are not playing small anymore. You are not waiting for permission. You are not apologizing for your fire. You are standing in it, breathing in it, becoming it. And yes, not everyone will understand. Some will resist your light. Some will call your truth too much, your love too fierce, your stillness too strange. But remember this, they are not rejecting you. They are meeting their own discomfort in the face of your freedom. Keep shining anyway. Keep singing anyway. Keep walking with the certainty of someone who remembers their origin not in time, but in eternity. Because when your final breath comes, and it will, as it must for all who wear this flesh, may you not feel regret. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. Because you dared to live while you were alive. Because you refused to let your song be buried with you. And in that final moment, may you smile, knowing that your music did not die in you, it rose from you. And it changed the world in ways you'll never fully see, but always feel. There is a weight many carry not in their hands, but in their hearts. A heaviness that does not show in photographs, does not speak in meetings, does not scream for attention, yet it lives in the background of every breath, the weight of the past, of all that was left unsaid, all that was done and cannot be undone, all the moments when you betrayed your own truth just to be accepted. This weight weaves itself into the bones, into the muscles, into the pause before we speak, into the hesitation before we dream. And though we wear smiles, though we fulfill roles, though we go on living, something within us whispers that we are not yet free. The soul knows. The soul remembers who you were before the world taught you to be afraid. It remembers the softness you once carried without shame, the wildness that danced before you were taught to be small, the wonder that saw magic in mud and miracles in silence. And that memory, that sacred memory, is what fuels your longing now. You think you're yearning for success. You think you're hungry for validation. But beneath that, what you are truly yearning for is freedom. Freedom from the narratives that have held you hostage. Freedom from the inherited shame passed down through generations. Freedom from the guilt of being too much or not enough. Freedom from the voice that says you should be over this by now. But healing does not follow a clock, and the soul is not interested in timelines. The soul is interested in truth. And truth is, you cannot liberate yourself by denying what you feel. You cannot transcend by pretending you've already arrived. You cannot release the past until you meet it not with judgment, but with love. So go back gently, not to relive, but to retrieve. There are pieces of you waiting in those old memories, not the wounded parts, the wise ones, the parts of you that endured, that survived, that still believe in beauty despite everything. They are still there, not lost, not broken, waiting. And as you walk back into those memories, hold your younger self as you wish you had been held. Say the words you needed to hear then. Offer the love that no one else knew how to give. Because every time you bring compassion to your past, you unchain your present. This is how the soul is liberated, not by escaping the pain, but by walking through it with presence, by saying, even this has something to teach me. Even this can be turned into light. For nothing is wasted in the hands of the divine. Not your failures, not your regrets, not your heartbreaks. They are the soil in which your compassion grows. They are the ashes from which your empathy rises. And when you no longer fear your own story, when you no longer hide from your own depth, you become unshakable. Not because you are untouched by pain, but because you are no longer ruled by it. Your soul doesn't want safety. It wants aliveness. It wants you to laugh fully again, to cry without shame again, to dance like the wind again, to speak with no need to explain or justify or edit, to love not to be completed, but to remember you were never incomplete. This is the liberation your soul has been seeking, the permission to exist as you are, without armor, without masks, without the weight of the past chaining your wings. And this liberation, it is not a moment, it is a practice, a devotion, a sacred unfolding. And with every breath that says, I choose presence, you step further out of the prison of your history and into the vastness of your being. And as the soul prepares to fly, it does not soar away from the world, it sinks deeper into it, not as a burden, but as a blessing. This is the paradox of liberation. You don't ascend by escaping life, you ascend by embracing it more completely. Not in theory, not in spiritual bypass, but in the trembling courage to let each moment matter. You begin to see that the things which once haunted you no longer hold their power, not because they've disappeared, but because you've changed your relationship to them. The wound you once tried to hide has become a sacred portal. The mistake you couldn't forgive becomes the doorway to humility. The relationship that broke your heart becomes the teacher that opened it. Nothing is wasted. Even your sorrow is sacred. Even your confusion is part of the path. And it all begins to soften. The grip on your story, the clenched fist around who you thought you had to be. You are not the narrative. You are not the name. You are not the version of yourself that only existed in order to be loved by others. You are what remains when all of that falls away. You are the breath before identity, the silence before sound. And in this silence, the music becomes clearer. It's not grand, it's not theatrical, it's a quiet return, the kind that happens when the inner child finally feels safe enough to come home, when the deepest parts of you trust that they no longer need to perform, that they can just be naked in truth, bare in light, unafraid of being seen. This is how the soul sings, not in noise, but in realness, not in perfection, but in presence. And this realness begins to reshape everything. You no longer chase things to fill a void. You no longer try to be chosen. You no longer grip life so tightly, afraid it will slip through your fingers. Instead, you become the vessel through which grace flows. You begin to hold space for others, not as a savior, but as someone who knows what it feels like to be seen at the level of soul. And in this way, your liberation becomes a lighthouse. Not loud, not flashy, but steady, still, unmoving in a stormy world. You don't need to shout your truth when your presence radiates it. You don't need to force change when your energy invites it. You don't need to heal others when your own healing ripples into every room you enter. This is the silent revolution, the return to wholeness. And wholeness does not mean that everything is clean or resolved or fixed. It means that you have come home to all of it, the mess, the beauty, the chaos, the grace, that you hold it all with reverence, that you bow to it, that you allow it to shape you not into something else, but into more of who you really are. This is the soul's deepest music, the song that can only be sung by the one who remembers who they are beneath the layers, beneath the years, beneath the noise. And now you remember, and now, as the final notes of this sacred symphony begin to emerge, as the current slows to a gentle stream and the soul begins to rest in its own fullness, I ask you, not from mind, but from the heart behind the heart, can you feel it? That stillness, that peace, that quiet, vast expanse within you where nothing is missing, nothing is wrong, and nothing needs to be explained. The place where you are not chasing, not proving, not becoming, just being the music, being the light, being the echo of something eternal wearing the shape of your name. This is what you came here for, not to be impressive, but to be expressive, not to fit in, but to remember that you were never made to be confined, not to collect achievements, but to offer presence. And in this remembrance, everything unnecessary begins to fall away. You loosen your grip on outcomes. You stop bracing for love. You stop apologizing for existing. You no longer shrink yourself to fit the room. You enter as you are, full-hearted and unarmored, because you finally trust that the divine doesn't speak in measurements, it speaks in alignment. You don't need to do more, you need to be more you. Because the world is not aching for another perfect mask. The world is aching for truth, for presence, for souls like yours, unguarded and wide open, for people who live like prayers not recited but embodied. And that, beloved soul, is who you are when you let the music rise. You don't just fill a space, you bless it. You don't just speak, you transmit. You don't just survive, you awaken. And when the final breath of this life leaves your body, it will not ask you, were you perfect? It will ask you, were you real? Did you love with your whole being? Did you give yourself permission to matter? Did you turn your wounds into wisdom and your silence into song? Did you let the sacred within you come forth not once or twice, but every day in the way you listened, the way you forgave, the way you walked gently through this earth, leaving behind not noise, but resonance? If the answer is yes, even in fragments, even in whispers, then you did not die with your music still in you. You gave it. You lived it. And because of that, the universe is forever changed. Not in loud ways, but in real ways. And the real is always eternal. So take this breath, not as an ending, but as a beginning. Not as a final note, but as a new silence in which even more truth can rise. The silence of someone who has returned to their own divine rhythm. The silence of someone who remembers they are the instrument. They are the song. They are the sound of God sung in human form. And the music will never stop. Because it is you, it always was. And now it is free.